Hi, it's Chris and Elizabeth. We are so excited to introduce our first guest of the day, our keynote speaker. We have Sophia A. Nelson. Welcome to our Women's Day conference. Sophia is an award-winning author and journalist. She is regularly on CNN, and she's a professor at the Christopher Newport University. Thank you for joining us, Sophia.
Thank you for having me. Happy International Women's Day.
Amazing. You know, speaking of that, let's just hold up that book right off the bat. You have a book with HCI Books, The Woman Code. Oh, look at that. Proud, right? When does that release, or has it released?
It releases on March 16th. It is the paperback version updated of the global bestseller, The Woman Code, which was in hardcover for 7 years before we decided to put it in paperback. So we're really excited about the update. I focused more on COVID and coping with COVID with the code. And I felt really strongly that women needed something to lift them during this time and to help give them guideposts on how to get through this pretty amazing, unprecedented moment we're in as women.
Yeah, I would. Could you talk more about the book, like what it's about?
Yeah, The Woman Code it's interesting. It's a book about our compass, our code, our connectivity, and how we engage each other first with self. How do I take care of me? How do I honor me? And then how do I use that to honor, connect, respect, and love and lift other women? And the book, like I said, was an amazing success when we first released it in 2014. It did well literally on every continent on this earth. I was all over the globe, including Sydney, Australia, which was amazing. And I'm excited about giving women these tips that I learned from my paternal grandmother as a girl, some, from being a professional woman in the world, just wisdoms and codes that we all really know. Like code number 1 is know your value. I know we're going to get into all this. If you don't know your value, that is the most fundamental core thing every young woman, every woman as she emerges, goes into midlife and then into her latter golden years, that's the core of your life. That's the core of how you either do well or you don't do well. If you don't know your worth and your value, it really all starts there. And Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe, who wrote Know Your Value, of Know Your Value fame, did the foreword for this book. We partnered together. We have a lot of corporate partners, a lot of groups like the Links or the Junior League, the sororities, the fraternities. So we're really excited about the reach of this book and helping women to walk by their code.
I love that. That's awesome. And that know your value, it's so great. I love that you tied in your grandmother there. So obviously you were getting these messages from a very young age, like learning how to know your value. And so how can women better know their value, especially if they didn't have your grandmother or, they haven't read the book yet? And so what tip would you have around that? Like, how do we really grab that and own that? What would you say?
I like to say that adulthood is what we spend trying to overcome our childhood, right? So whatever messages you got as a young girl, as a teen in your house, really defines a lot of your self-worth, right? So if you grew up in a positive household where people affirmed you, told you were pretty, told you were smart, told you could do anything like I did, you go on and you usually do pretty well. It's not that you don't have challenges, but those early messages about your worth and value matter. And as we know, we see it in the media every day, ladies. We see it really with COVID. I was actually on a phone call last night with one of my young cousins, who's not yet a teenager, but she's having thoughts of depression, suicidal thoughts that her generation apparently deals with a lot. And it is a matter of worth. So I spent a lot of time talking to her about her value. And she listened and reaffirming her that no matter if you get bully girls or mean girls, you can't let that sway you. So your value and knowing your value better really requires you to assess what messages did I get as a girl and as a teen. And if they were negative, if you were told you were ugly, if you were told you weren't as smart as your sister, if you were told, God forbid, that you were too fat, or whatever messages you got as a young girl into your teen and young adulthood, those things resonate with you throughout the rest of your life. So you kind of have to do some undoing and readjusting and retelling of your story so that you are clear beyond what anybody else thinks, that you matter, that you have value, that you have worth. And if you don't know that, life is hard. It's very hard.
How can the Woman Code help people find their incredible best?
Well, I love the title of your conference. It's very powerful. It's very affirming. And
Yeah.
if you want to find your best life, I'm going to keep going back to this. And it is the core thread of the book, which is you. This isn't a book about what other people can do or what other people should be doing. This is a book about you, and you, and how you live, how you treat yourself, how you treat other people, how you make peace with those things that are behind you so that you can focus on those things that are ahead of you. It is a book about being brave. It is a book about being your authentic self. And again, these are nuggets of wisdom that I learned from grandmom, from my paternal grandmother, who had a 6th grade education. She wasn't an educated woman. She comes from South Carolina, but she was the smartest woman I'll ever know. And I've used the code and the things she taught me, particularly in those moments in life where you will walk alone, where it will be you and God. And I've learned how to talk to myself and to encourage myself so that I can be a better Sophia with others. And so I think the secret to the code always is going to go back to whether you're reading code 7, 14, 19, or 20 is code number 1, which is knowing your value. And when you know that, this code works and it all fits together. And again, we're going to talk through those, I know, but the codes really fall logically into sequence. And when you read them, you go, I knew that. Damn, I knew that. I needed to be reminded of that. So it's really what it's about.
Why? I'm going to ask you your why. Why did you write this book? Was there a moment in your own life where you've had to unlearn, or what?
That is a great question. Code number 9, I'm not going to give away what it is, but code number 9 tells you why I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I had this epic fallout fight with a bunch of what I call mean girls who were actually in my sorority. And you think your sorority sisters are supposed to be your girls, right? You wear your letters, you love each other. Well, no. Not every woman is going to be your friend. Not every woman is going to be your ally. Not every woman is going to clap when you win. And that's a fundamental thing that we need to understand. And the experience left me so horrified, jaded, scarred that I was like, I gotta make sure no other woman ever goes through some mess like this again. And it really was from that place of being very hurt. Code number 9 is do not gossip. It is my least favorite thing in life. I think gossip is pure cancer. It's pure evil. It does nothing but break, destroy, and harm people. And again, if you go to our modern times, if you've got daughters, nieces, etc., the mean girl bullying is a big deal. So it starts really young, and it doesn't stop. As I was telling my young cousin last night, it's going to last throughout the thread of your life, sadly, because women are always going to be catty. They're always going to do the hater thing, but you've got to rise above that and you got to surround yourself with women who aren't like that. And there are a whole lot of women who are nothing like that. And this experience ended up being the catalyst. And the story goes like this. I was with Katie Couric in New York back when she had the Katie Couric show. And we were talking about, she wanted to do a show on why women were often frenemies. And she was really, dealing with this. Her daughters had been going through some stuff. Yeah. And I began to write stickies and stick them on the wall. We were with her production team. And we looked up and I said, that's a woman code. That's just a code of conduct. And Katie looked at me and her team looked at me and said, that's your next book. And I went home. I literally started typing it up. I sent it to my agent and we had a bidding war within a couple of weeks. So that's a true story. But that's how the book came about.
That's awesome. And I love that you saw it and ran with it. And that sparks joy to me, because I think sometimes we just need to act and we just need to do it. So good for you, Sophia, for embracing that. You've touched on a few high points of some of the codes and little nuggets here. And so I think what we're going to do is ask you to take us through like a flash fire masterclass. I know you're not going to give all the codes away because obviously we want people to read the book and enjoy it all, but we've got a couple codes that we want to dive a little deeper with you on. And you had mentioned just a moment ago about living authentically. So that is code number 4, living authentically. And so everyone says this, and you mentioned it a moment ago as well, right? And so what does this mean?
Well, I'll do it like this. The codes are broken down into sections, right? So the first four, which is know your value, make peace with your past, teach people how to treat you, and live authentically. Those are your first four. You can't get to living authentically if you don't know your value. If you don't make peace with those things that are behind you so that they don't break you. And literally, as we know, our past can really do a lot of damage to us if we stay stuck there. And then the third one is you teach people how to treat you, which I think we'll talk about in a minute. But the living authentically is you being you and you not feeling like you have to live the life that your parents want you to live, or that somebody else told you you had to live, or that you have to fit into somebody's box. As a woman of color, we saw this last night in the Meghan Markle interview. The struggle of her being of mixed race in a family that dates back 1,200 years, that didn't know how to handle an authentic, independent, strong woman of color, right? And so we all get these boxes that we feel we have to stay in order to please others. I'm telling you, get out the box. Do your own thing, be you. The women that walk in greatness in this world, the Oprahs, the Michelle Obamas, the Hillary Clintons, and again, I'm just picking a few. There are so many I could name. These women are authentically self. They don't answer to somebody else's call. They answer to the call that's in here. And that's all being authentic is. I think women get caught up sometimes, right? And well, what does that mean? It just means be you and do you and be okay with that.
That can be really hard. Like,
Yes.
especially if you have an opinion. How do you voice an opinion without dividing your audience?
Well, code number 15 is be brave. And I think that when you know who you are and you know you have worth and value, again, everything's going to go back to you being strongly rooted in, I have something to say, I have worth. And when you as a woman express your opinions, and again, we see this every day, there's a double standard for what women can do and what men can do, even in 2021. You've got to be brave enough to raise your voice because, again, the women who've made history, whether it goes back to Joan of Arc or whether you fast forward to Rosa Parks, whatever it is, these women had the courage and the bravery to speak their mind and to let the chips fall where they may. Now, ladies, I'm not telling you to go into your corporate boardroom tomorrow and tell everybody how raggedy they are and how awful they are. I'm not telling you that.
No.
What I am telling you to do is to understand that there's a moment and that there's a time to speak. And you have to trust that you know what you're talking about, that you have something of value to add, and that it's going to land just fine. And you just have to have the faith and the courage to do it.
I love that. And I think bravery is one of the things we talk about at Best Ever You a lot. And that bravery, and I like that you put in that caveat that you still want to do it in a way that you can look in the mirror and go, I handled myself with class. Like you're not going and flipping tables or causing a scene that doesn't reflect on if you were to look back. Yeah.
You know,
flipping tables.
Interesting that you said that. I think that this notion of, I always tell my nieces and young women, exits matter. Exits matter more than how you enter. So when you're leaving that job, when you're leaving that relationship, when you're leaving that friendship, the way you go out of it says a lot about who you are. You can be strong and say something very strong. You can throw shade if you know how to be shady really smooth and you know how to have grace, right? So it's all about it's always the how you do it. And again, that goes back to how I value Sophia. And once I know that Sophia is a valuable, loved, full woman, I treat other women with the same exact respect and courtesy because I get that every woman has value. Every woman has value.
Thank you for that reminder. That's such a powerful reminder to hear because sometimes we forget that. I think we do.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful lead into your code number 7, being resilient. That's such a great word, and I think it's a one that's like easy to say, but it's a tall order sometimes. So talk to us about code number 7.
The perfect example of being resilient to me is one of our fellow authors at HCI, Kimberly S. Reed, who I know will be on a little bit later. Kim is one of my best friends, and she wrote a new book called Optimists Always Win. I was there when Kim's mother died of breast cancer, and I gave in part the eulogy. She asked me to do that, which is the most humbling thing one of your friends can do, to ask you to talk about their mother when she's passed. And then a few months later, Kim's grandmother got breast cancer. And then a few months after that, Kim got breast cancer. And I'll never forget that time because we were all still younger, and you don't usually get breast cancer. It can come at any time. And Kim was still in her 30s, and it was devastating. And the way that she handled it, which her book, she talks about this, and the grace and the strength. I would have been doubled up in a corner somewhere. And I say this to her to this day. How did you go from losing your mom to your grandmom to getting the death sentence yourself? And I never saw her be negative. I never saw her not be kind. I never saw her not get back up and keep her faith and still do her work. And I saw her plod through what, again, was simply unbelievable, and do it with grace and class and with resilience every step of the way. So being resilient is really about the ability to deal with whatever cards life hands you. Because young women, listen to me. Life is going to hand you some cards you don't see coming. You're never going to see it coming. And things are going to happen, and you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to shift. You're going to have to be resilient. You're going to have to get up again and again and again and again, because that's life. And life never is perfect all the time. It's never good all the time. And it's also never bad all the time. It's never difficult all the time. But to me, the epitome of resilience, of getting back up, and of being a woman of grace and class in the midst of the most unbelievable storm, is Kimberly Reed, who you all hear from later. And again, her new book is Optimists Always Win. And I'm so proud of her. And just, I've watched her. I was there. I had a seat in her front row. So I know what she went through.
Can you give us an example of a time where you needed to be resilient? I actually have two questions for you. I really want to know kindergarten Sophia Nelson. I really want to know
I can
kindergarten.
go get my mom if you want her to talk about it. I think that's a really hard question, because I think my life has been a study in resilience. And what I mean by that is being a woman of my age, in my early 50s now, and being an attorney, and being someone who was the first at many things that she did, the first to walk through the door, the only one in the room, that takes a lot of being able to take punches and roll with them, and not let it affect you in such a way that it damages you. And part of being resilient is planting that smile on your face when you really want to let somebody have it, and you would be justified in turning over tables, as you said. But you know that you can't, because you're the first woman to walk through that door. You're the first Black woman, and you know that there are others coming behind you. And I'm sure if we ask Kamala Harris sometimes what her days were like and what they are like, she's gone from being a powerful United States senator to now she stands 12 feet behind the president and doesn't say anything anymore because she's vice president. And being resilient is something that, again, I could give you many examples, but I think probably one of the most important ones was, when you have personal loss, and, when you love someone and they pass away, and you think you were going to have a life with them and a future with them. I don't think there's anything more devastating than I've ever been through than that. And there's not a day that goes by 30 plus years later that I don't still think about Greg. But I think that, and you go on and you move on, but you have to find the ability to get back up even amidst the worst losses of your life. And you have to still say every morning when you get up, God, thank you that you woke me up. God, thank you that I'm in my right mind. And I wake up every day and I find something to be thankful for. Even when I don't really feel like it, I force myself to say, I'm blessed, because there's so many people that would trade places with me in a heartbeat, and I know it. And you have to just continually get back up. You have to continually reinvent yourself. You have to continually encourage yourself, because everything about how you engage with other human beings is about how you feel about you.
If we get a little teary right now, Chris, I would love for you to just share your story.
So Sophia, I don't think you know this, and I think some of our listeners don't as well, but in 2020, February, my husband Ben was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at age 43, and it was sudden and unknown. We thought he had developed a food allergy, and July 16th, he passed away just before his 44th birthday. And so when you are talking right now, it is just pulling at my heart.
Oh, yeah. My heart.
Mention Greg and that, and I think that it resonated so much with me. And one of the things that I really attached to in what you're talking about is that gratitude. I wrote a blog during that time every day leading up to and then after and everything. And that blog was full of gratitude, full of grace, full of love, full of even humor, moments that were humorous and wonderful. And that gratitude is what kept me positive and going during his illness and then after and even now. So that's one of my stories and one of my truths. So when you talk about that, I can just speak wholeheartedly about that resilience and that gratitude being like this.
Yeah, first of all, very sorry for your loss. That's so tough. And, we were young. I was 19 my freshman year.
Yeah.
21, get sudden cancer. Back then, lymphoma was a death sentence. You just weren't, there was nothing they could do for you, right?
Yeah.
And so my point is, it sticks with you. You'll never, ever forget him. You will always love him. But the thing is, when these things happen suddenly, you're going along with life, and life looks one way one day, and then it looks totally different the next day. And that's really what I want women to take away from this, that no matter, again, if you're a young woman starting out or you're a woman who's married and you've met your prince and he's wonderful and something happens, or it's with your parents or your children, God forbid, or whatever it can be, life is short. If we live to be 100, I still have my maternal grandmother who I dedicated the paperback to. The hardcover was the paternal grandmother, but she's 91 and she's buried 3 of her children. Grandpa's gone now, and she's still a woman of faith. She's still funny. She can still laugh. And I marvel at her sometimes, like 91 years. She grew up during segregation. She grew up in the Deep South. She remembers World War II, all these things, just the different world she grew up in. And yet she is still the most resilient person I know. So it is a lifetime practice, ladies. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't all get fixed at one time. Yeah. You just have to keep getting back up like you did, and writing the blog was probably very cathartic. I think that I dealt with it very differently. I drank for 2 years. Nobody knew it. And I still was a straight A student and vice president, student body president, and all the things, because we mask really well as women. We know how to look like we got it all together, and we're falling apart. But, I had to get some help and do some work, because we don't often cope with these type of things really well. And you have to, again, just find good people. And then I know we're going to talk about that, who will be there for you to help you get through.
Yeah, I think that's so key. And if anybody there listening is feeling that I feel so alone, please know that you're not alone. And I think the culture around getting help has changed, that there's a lot more grace and acceptance and acknowledgement of, if you need help, that's okay. And help is available through so many channels. And I mean, from you saying, 30 years ago this happened, and the high functioning coping, taking that all inside by yourself, how hard that must have been. But I think today there's a lot more conversation about it. And I hope that anybody listening knows that they're not alone. And if you don't know where to go, reach out to us and we can help you get to who you need to be with, because we will
I also think it's important to note, and again, I want to say this to young women, because when you're, right out of high school, everything is ahead of you, and you're out of college, everything is ahead of you. But what I want women to know is the key to resilience, and we're spending time on this because we all know this well, because we've lived it, is that there are going to be more losses. It doesn't mean death. It just means there will be other losses in your life, because that's the life cycle. And when you're resilient, and when you're firmly rooted, and when you know how to guard your heart, and when you know how to put together like a toolkit, as I like to call it, of living, you will get through it no matter what life throws at you. When you've got good people around you, when you've got a good row, we'll talk about that. You can get through anything. You really can.
Sophia, I really love having you here today with us. This is, I needed to hear all of this, and I hope everybody is enjoying this. And I think the next thing that I would love to learn from you is about aging gracefully. At 51 years old now, I am like, how do we do this?
Well,
we call Chris calls it level. Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean to, but
aging gracefully is, I was named after Sophia Loren, and if you've looked at her lately, she's 90 years old, and she's still beautiful.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of reading about her. She's the lead-in quote for this code. Talking about basically age is basically a mindset. It's not how you look. It's definitely how you feel, but it's a mindset. And I think in our culture, much differently than Europe and some of the ancient cultures, like the Chinese and other civilizations that have been around for millennia, they revere their elderly. They hold them up, particularly older women. They're the matriarchs, right? They get a lot of respect. In our culture, once you hit 50, it's like something happens. They put you out the pasture. It's like you're dead or something like that. And
I remember being worried about turning 40.
yes,
I
I
was
remember
like,
that.
oh no.
50 was a much different birthday, but I got to tell you, your 50s are very liberating. And if you've taken care of yourself, you don't look 50. I don't look 50. So if you go back and look at pictures of our grandmothers when they were 50, or our great grandmothers, they looked old at 25 because life was harder. It was a different life. And so I think aging gracefully, the key I want young women to know, and women who are emerging through middle life, is that aging is a gift. If you're not aging, you're not here anymore. And people need to hold fast that to age is a gift. It is a blessing to live to be a 50, 60, 70, 80, 90-year-old woman. You have life behind you. You have wisdom behind you. You have, Lord willing, a family behind you. And you are a mentor. You're a friend. You're the wise woman in the room. And there's something powerful about that, because the three of us sitting here and all of you watching could not write the books we do. We could not do all that we do if we didn't live a little bit. So I know that we're in a culture obsessed with youth, a culture obsessed with, how sexy your body is. Look, I ride that Peloton and I run circles around those 30-year-olds. At the end of the day, it's all about how you feel, and it's about what's going on up here. It goes back to code number 1. Do you know your value? And when you do, you know that, dear Lord, I look at my mother who's in her 70s, my grandmother in her 90s, and I'm like, they look great. I've got good genes. I'm blessed. And it's amazing to watch the evolution as they age and the things you learn from them, from the time you were a young woman. So aging gracefully is so important, to take care of your body and start in your 20s. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Take care of you, so that by the time you hit midlife, your 40s, 50s, and 60s, because that's where life happens, ladies. I hate to break it to you. It ain't in your 20s and your 30s. Those are the kind of fun, fine new years. You get married, you build your family, whatever. But in your 40s, 50s, and 60s is where life really happens. There's a lot that goes on in there. And it's really kind of when life begins. It's when you really figure out who you are, and you figure out what you want, and you now no longer care what people think about it. You say what you want to say. I love it. It's pretty good, actually.
I have a layup, Chris, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah, get it.
So, Sophia, you mentioned, loving our elderly, really holding them up, listening, and so forth. I have 4 boys. They're 20 to 26. One of the things that we've taught them, is to really choose a mentor. They have the flight path. They know what they're doing. Listen, because so many people just disregard. It's like, oh, you're old. I don't care. That kind of thing. Could you tell us the importance of mentorship?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am in life without mentors, male and female alike. And by the way, ladies, your mentor doesn't have to be another woman. It can be a man. My mentors coming up as a young woman were white men. That was the only people in the room. There were very few white women. There were no women of color, and there were no men of color. So, and sadly, that hasn't changed a whole lot. But the representation of a mentor and a sponsor in your life is critical, because mentors are there to listen, to bounce things off of. It's kind of like an older big brother, big sister type relationship almost. That person really helps to guide you, think through decisions. Whereas a sponsor is somebody who's going to open doors for you, use their cachet, use their access and their privilege and whatever it is, and they're going to extend that to you and make sure that you get the first opportunity or the third opportunity, whatever it is. I've never gotten a job in my life, not once, I want to be clear, where someone didn't pick up the phone and say, love Sophia, you should hire her, give her an opportunity. I've never applied. Just every job I've ever gotten was because of a referral or word of mouth. And every book deal, every opportunity came through relationships, through mentors, through friendships, through relationships.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that, recognizing that too, right? Sometimes we think we've got to reinvent the whole wheel or do it all. And the truth is we just don't. So you talking about mentors and the people who helped you, I think that's really valuable so that people hear that and know that. And it's a perfect lead into code 16 is lifting other women as you climb. So talk to us about that. Are we doing a good job of that these days? Are we, what is that like?
You know, I think we're a lot better because of forums like this, because of Oprah, because of the Today Show, because of these forums where we have
Because
women.
of Sophia.
Because of Sophia. Let's give her a round of applause. Because of Sophia. Yeah,
you're very kind. You're very kind. But because of forums like this, and I mean this sincerely, 30 years ago, Oprah was just starting. And I remember how exciting it was to have her, but how controversial she was, because she was talking about healing from your past. She was talking about dealing with your childhood wounds, and people thought, oh, this chick is some guru weird. And no, what she was saying is that if you're going to be a successful woman in particular, you're going to need other women to help you, to nourish you, to nurture you, to support you. And when they do, you have an obligation then to bring them along and lift them up. And I don't think we do a great job of that as women, particularly in corporate America. I think we do an awful job. There are a lot of programs. We have ERG groups. I do a ton of Fortune 50 work, Fortune 25 work. And you still see that there's kind of like this ceiling that we hit. And there's maybe one or two women in the C-suite, and maybe one on the board. And there's not a bench of younger women that we're bringing along. So I think it's really important, as we talk about what the guys do in the old boys club. It's called an old boys club for a reason, because they take care of each other. They hook each other up. They bring each other along. They refer each other. Women, we need the old girls club to work, and we need to create benches. We need to create a farm team, if you will, that once you begin to age up into your 50s and 60s and you're on your way onto retirement, you've developed 10 other young women or 5 other young women who will then develop other young women. And I think millennial women are going to be better at this than we are as Gen Xer women. And the baby boomer women were really bad at it. And they were really bad at it because they really caught hell from the men. They could be sexually harassed. They could be mistreated. They had to be one of the boys. When you see these women of a certain age, you know what I'm talking about, because when
I do. I definitely do. Being an old news anchor, I definitely do.
Yes, when we were young women, I know I was afraid of women over a certain age. I thought they were crazy. And I don't mean to say that to be rude. I'm just saying I was afraid of them because they were so aggressive, and so because they had been taught that you had to be one of the guys in order to succeed. And I'm telling you, you don't. You can be a woman, you can be soft, pretty, smart, sensual, sacred, all those things, and still be a badass in the boardroom and a badass in your business, and you can lift other women up as you climb.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all competition. And I think that's another thread from my experience in the corporate world is the changing scene with the bringing in interns and talking to young women and having that mentorship role where it's like, it's not her against her. It's how can we help each other together, right? So that competition, I think, was also a huge thing.
Collaboration is the word. Collaboration versus competition. Collaboration.
Yes. I have a question about you as an attorney. Could you take us back, please, to the moment where you decided to become an attorney?
Oh God, that was not me that decided that. That was my folks that decided that. and there's a great story. Look, first generation African American that was going to go to college and go to grad school. It was either doctor or lawyer. I chose lawyer. It made sense. I like to talk, so that was going to work for me. But the great story of my first book, Black Woman Redefined, Dispelling Myths and Discovering Fulfillment in the Age of Michelle Obama, that book will be 10 years old this May. I tell the story how I made the decision to stop being a lawyer and to start living the life I wanted to lead, which was to be a journalist and author and to do what I'm doing with you right now. It was my year I was up for partner. I was in my early 30s, big law firm, Big 10 law firm. Engaged to the wrong guy. Everything I'm doing, checked by the box list, right? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Don't miss what I'm saying, ladies. because this goes back to knowing your value and being your authentic self. And I woke up one day and I had chest pains. I was way too young to have chest pains. I'm in great shape. I go to the doctor. The doctor does all the tests. She says, "You're fine. What's really going on with you?" And I started to cry. And Nancy, who was my doctor at the time, Nancy Gaba, I'll never forget her, at George Washington University Hospital. And I started to tell her how unhappy I was. I didn't really like the guy I was with. He's a great looking guy, great job, but he wasn't very nice. It just was a box I was checking. I was getting ready to be a partner in a big firm. I hated what I did. I wanted to write books. I wanted to be a journalist. And she said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And I thought about that for a long time because, you work really hard in law school. You spend a lot of money, and I was making a lot of money. I would be making a couple $1 million a year now as a partner. But instead, I got a friend who helped me meet the editor at the Washington Post, Steve Luxembourg. He let me write my first article, which went viral. And then I wrote many other articles. Next thing I know, this guy named Barack Obama is running for president. His wife, Michelle Obama, finds herself being attacked, as a black woman and being stereotyped. And I wrote a piece in the Washington Post that went so viral that it literally launched my literary career. I got a call from an agent in New York, and the rest is history. A Pulitzer nomination later, a Best Book Award, 3 books going into 4 books, 5 books later. Here you have it. So I just made the shift. I took the leap, and it worked.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Wrote that down while you're talking. What are you going to do about it?
And you know what I loved there too? What I loved is you were like, I'm checking boxes. And you really thought you were on the path, the trajectory where you're like, but I'm checking all these boxes. But what I heard you say was, but they were the wrong boxes. And that is just such a huge message to remember, right? Even if you're like, I'm doing all the things, but are they the things for you?
Well, this goes back to the authentic self question, right? And again, I really want to say this to young women and also to those of us in that, you're about to turn 40, 50. You do realize you got a whole lot of living left, right? You're not dead. It is not over. You can pivot and change your career and your life at 40 or 50. People do it every day. And what I did was I made that decision that I was not happy. I did not like this. Now, I would probably have a really good life and I could check boxes, but I'd probably end up divorced. And that wasn't where I wanted to be. So you've got to find that bravery again, different from courage, because bravery to me is like, when I think brave, I think warrior. I think like, I'm getting in this battle, I'm going to do it. And when Nancy asked me, what are you going to do about it? That was it. She didn't need to say anything else because she put me into a mindset that said, you can bitch about this, or you can do something about it, or you can choose the path you're on, which is not going to end well. You'll be like 80% to 90% of the rest of the world that goes through life and they just do what they're supposed to do versus what they want to do. And those are 2 very different things. Very different things.
Yeah, it totally is. And when we're at a time like that where you're about to make those changes or you're doing things that are brave or courageous, like you say, it makes me think about code number 17, and you like to call it your front row, right? Because making those huge changes, gosh, that's hard. So talk to us about your front row and what does this code mean?
This is the coup de grace of the book. Other than know your value, knowing your front row is it, because we know from Leadership Principles 101 that the foundational principle of leadership is that the 5 people that you spend the most time with and that you're around really determine the trajectory of your life. So young people, listen up. If you are hanging out with people who are using drugs, or if they're, living the wrong way, and intuitively they're wilding out and they're not focused, they're not about anything, you're with the wrong pack of people. If you want to make something of your life, you will connect with people who are smarter than you, who are wiser than you, and are doing better than you. As Bishop Jakes likes to say, I never saw a hater doing better than me. I love that, right? Because when people are doing better than you, they don't have time to hate on you. They're not worried about what you got. They've already got it. And so they're in a place where they can give, where they can lift. And so the people that you have in your front row, I want you to think of like a movie theater, right? Like this row of seats in the movie theater. When you go to the Kennedy Center or you go to the Met and you buy the best tickets, you're in the front row. You're going to pay the most money. You are the VIP. The VIP seats of your life are that front row. You want many rows in your life. Some people need to be in the balcony and some people need to be out the door. So you need to understand that having this row of women and of course men in your life who speak life to you, who will pick you up, who will, in my row, I have some amazing women who are older. And by the way, your row should have people who are younger than you. You'll have most of the people will be peers, but then they need to be older than you so that you have a good swath of advice that runs the life spectrum, right? So I have some young mentees, young women who work at Microsoft and at Walgreens, and they're my mentees and my proteges, but they also reverse mentor me. Reverse mentoring, I think, is key because these young women in their 20s are in a whole new frontier than the one I came up in. And they teach me things and they challenge me and they say, oh, no, that's not right. You got to think about it this way. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. And so I want you to understand that building this row is a lifelong process. I still have my first best friend from grade school. Not very many people do. But you're going to make friends in high school. You're going to make friends in college. You're going to make friends in grad school or at your job. But there comes a point when you really stop building that row and it becomes a very dependable, reliable group of ride or die people. And the people in my row who are older are empowered by me, and this is important, to check me before I wreck me. So when I do something stupid or I'm about to do something that's not right or I send a tweet that's crazy, I've been called by some of my older women mentors who are like, you were right about what you said, but I don't like the way you said it. You need to clean that up and you need to woman up and you need to apologize.
A little less shade, Sophia, a little less shade, right?
Yes, absolutely. So it is, and then me having the humility to say, you're right. I'm going to not argue with them, not, bitch back at them. That's not what this is about. It's about trusting the people who got your back to tell you also, if you got a bunch of yes people in your life, you got the wrong people in your life. You got a bunch of sycophants and people just tell you how great you are and how wonderful you are. You're failing. You need people who will snatch you and be like, no, that was not okay.
You know,
I have to tell you, when we were getting ready for this conference just 2 days ago, Elizabeth and I were working and we had one of those moments where she told me, she said, I don't know if this is the right, reconsider this. We had a good conversation and then we worked for a bit. And she said, you're a bit quiet. I said, I'm just busy being wrong over here. And
that was cute. I'm busy being grumpy.
Not getting my way over here. But
it was.
I value that ability, and it's not easy because we don't love to hear when somebody says you did not do your shiny best, and I know you, and then you're like, oh, you want to be sometimes defensive.
If you change your mindset about this, hear me on this, women. If you can trust, this is where the row comes in the relationship. You know that she's got your back and vice versa. You know that. You have worked together now. You're friends long enough now that it's tested and trusted, right? And once you've got that, I am not for what young people do. Remember, this is a different generation. They unfriend, they cut, they block, they delete. They're a very transactional group of young people. And I'm telling you that's wrong. Relationships are not transactional. They're relational. And you've got to have people that have the space in your life and think of it differently, that they're not challenging me. They're not trying to correct me as much as they're helping me to be a better me. Because if you don't tell me when I get something wrong, I'm going to keep doing the wrong thing.
That's code 19.
Yes.
Have courageous conversations.
There you have it. Wow, are we living in a world right now where we need courageous conversation? By the way, young people, texting is not talking. That's not talking. A conversation is what we're doing right now. When we grew up, it was the telephone. I thought when the teen line came out, my life was made. When I could add 3 people on the call at the same time, life was good, right? And, who knew we would have devices and all of these things that connect us when they really disconnect us? So again, if you're blocking, deleting, ghosting is just bad. Do not ghost people. Tell them, I don't want to date you anymore. Tell them this isn't working out. Tell them you're moving on. Whatever it is, have the respect for yourself and for another human being. Remember what I said at the outset? Every woman has value. Every woman has value. She may not be who we want to hang out with. She may not be who we want in our row, but she's got value. And when I value you as a human being, I am going to then do what? I'm going to talk to you, audible, speaking, hearing, listening, conversing. We've got to get back. Our country is deeply divided right now by race, by class, by politics. And it's because everybody's yelling, literally burning stuff down and storming the Capitol. And instead of talking and saying, I need to be heard, or this is my point of view, or this is how I see it, instead, we're engaging in character assassination. The cancel culture is real in that we want to destroy people now when they disagree with us. We want to wipe people out. We want to take their job. We want to put them on blast. That is not
okay.
That's just bad.
Just not okay.
It's just not okay. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's wrong. And if
Yeah.
you're engaging in that, this is your wake-up call to stop it. Because that is not who you want to be when you're 60, 70, 80, 90. That's not who you want to be. That you want to be a woman of code, of honor, of integrity, and of relationship. Because that's what matters when we age. All this stuff we got, you can't take it with you. So if you can't treat people decent and in order, and you can't just be civil, I mean, is it that hard? Just talk.
No.
I mean, we always say if you can't see eye to eye, see heart to heart. And when you're talking about that, it is very easy on those devices to just, right? But when you're looking someone in the eyes and you hear their voice and they hear yours, it changes so much how you frame what you're saying and how, like, the things that we've all seen on social media. It's like, if you were face to face with that person, that would be very different.
Yeah, I think I like to call it thumb thugging. You know, you're a thumb thug. Bam. You know, and
That's
you
perfect.
would never talk to somebody like that. You're right.
So
You know,
true.
remember when we were coming up, when you wanted to break up with your boyfriend in high school, you usually hand your best friend a note and she hands it to him. At least you wrote it down, or you had to have a phone conversation on the phone. I don't want to go with you anymore. You know, I'm dating myself, but at the end of the day, we had to do it. You had to deal with the human being. You could not just block them and delete them and ghost them. I really want to underscore this. Young women, listen to me. Hear me on this. Do not talk it out. Because what ends up happening is, whether it's with your best friend, whether it's with your boyfriend, your folks, whatever it is, when you just cut stuff, and this is a code, never cut what you can untie. And I don't know if I added that one in, but that's one of my favorites.
Like a job.
You did 12.
Yes, and never cutting what you can untie. This is a great segue into that as we wind down here, is that my grandmother, when she used to say, baby, never cut what you can untie. What she was saying is, don't burn bridges unnecessarily. You don't have to do that. Yes, there are things and relationships, people, jobs that we should cut, blow up, and walk away from when they're toxic to the soul, when they drain our spirit, when they disrupt our peace. Anything that does that is not for you. Young women, any man putting his hands on you, disrespecting you with his words, dishonor, that is to be cut immediately. No conversation required. Get out. But we're talking about untying, and we're talking about being in a space where you know that I just need to step back for a minute. Let me get perspective. Let me heal. Let me calm down. And then I can have that courageous conversation, because if you've got a girlfriend that's been in your life for 25 years, and I've seen this happen too many times, I talk about it in code number 9. This soror that I was so close to, who was having a lot of issues that I knew nothing about. And that's part of the question. So sometimes when people are going through things, they take it out on you. But the thing is that when you untie, you're giving yourself and that other person a chance to just take a chill for a moment. Because if we've been friends for 25 years, and Kim and I have been through breast cancer together, a loss of a parent together, illnesses, all kind of things. And we're going to be friends till one of us dies. That is it. We're never not going to be friends. We're never not going to be girls, because we would, and there have been times we've been pissed at each other, but we step back. We don't cut each other off, and then we come back and we talk about it. So you've got to have people in your life that you empower. Again, to know that we've been friends too long for us to fall out. We're not going to fall out. We may not always be as close as we are in this moment, but if you need me, you can always call me. If you lose somebody, I'm going to be there. I'm going to send flowers. I'm going to do what's right. And it's really just training yourself to, again, remember that every woman has value.
Yeah,
And
I heard you loud and clear.
That's big.
Beautiful. So yeah, we do. Thank you for that. Thank you for this whole conversation. What a marvelous conversation. We're using our March marvelous. We have to go because of time, but we want to ask you one more question if we can. So Chris and I have this thing we call your incredible yes. It's a moment where you said yes to someone or something and it completely changed your life. You might have more than one, but we're wondering if you could share one of those.
It was the moment that Nancy said, "What are you going to do about it?" And I said yes to my heart. I said yes to the teenager who used to write in her diary, in her journal, and write stories. And my high school English teacher, Mr. O'Brien, who I adored, he told me, "You are a gifted writer and you should write. And that's your calling." And I was like, "Yeah, but I got to go to law school, Mr. O'Brien." And there's nothing wrong with that. The law degree has been a blessing. It opens doors for me. It gives me a credential. Now I'm a professor. I teach young people how to write and how to think. So it's great. But that moment I said yes to me, do not miss this, okay? We said a lot of stuff. If you hear nothing else I say to you, I want you to hear this. What's inside of you, every woman has everything she needs in her life to win at life right in here. You're gifted with it. You're born with it. You just got to unlock it. And when you say yes to you, not to mom and dad, not to this, not to that, but to you and what you know, because we all have an intuition. We all have that little voice that says, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you really feel passionate about. This is what makes you smile. Whatever that is, pay attention to it and then follow it to its logical conclusion. Because when you live the life that you're supposed to live, you bless so many other people. Me doing what I'm supposed to do, I wish I could share with you the letters, the cards, the emails, the notes, the things that I get from literally all over this world, where women who I'll never meet tell me that I saved them from reading my book, kept them from suicide or from whatever, or they were down and they changed their career. One woman became a public official after hearing me speak. She ran up on me years later, and said, "I heard you speak when I was in college, and I wanted to run for office, and I ran for the state senate at home, and I won, the youngest person ever." And I'm like, oh my God. So you never know the light that you're shining, your light, when you say yes to you, what that does for tens of thousands, millions of other human beings. You just never know. And that to me is it.
Oh my God. I love you so much.
Can I say one last thing?
Isn't it just cool, Chris?
Yes, you can, but you have to make it in 24 seconds. Sophia, go.
I want to tell women to go to, of course, pre-order the book now. They're in paperback. They're really affordable. Go to Amazon, go to Barnes, everywhere. Order copies, not just for you, but your friends. Start a book club. And then there's Woman Code Wine, WC, wineforthewomansoul.com. I have a whole line of wine that matches the book, because you can't have a book club without wine. And bubbles. The wineries here in Virginia, Bro Winery, one of my best friends, Jim Bro, who just lost her 19-year-old son, so I'm thinking about her. She's in a hard place right now. And love Jen. And Jen and I are going to do something around resilience when she's ready. But I just thank you, ladies, for what you do in the world. Thank you for having me. Keep blessing others. I'm excited to watch some of the rest of this later. And this has been a great discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Hold your book up one more time, because ladies, today we are Sophia is actually giving away a copy of this book. We're going to announce all our winners at the end of the conference later in the day. But thank you, Sophia, for your time. Thank you for your gift. And we'll put all of those links you just mentioned in the comments for this.
Can I add another giveaway? I'll give away a bottle of wine too. So add that and we'll have it shipped.
Yes, I will indeed. You bet.
I'll get some for you too as well. We three need to get together and drink. So
yeah. Well, first we have to just throw some glitter in the air. This is a Christmas.
I always throw imaginary glitter.
All right.
Celebrate things, and we celebrate you, Sophia. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again real soon.